All right, everybody, welcome into episode 6 of the Average Fantasy Cast. Unfortunately, Joe is not with us for E6. He's probably busy with schoolwork, and we totally understand that. You gotta put in the work to get that degree soon. So, no Joe, but that is totally okay. We're going to be breaking down the AFC North in episode 6. But before we get to the AFC North, gentlemen, some huge news. Leonard Fournette, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, released today by Jacksonville. Reports said that Fournette they were trying to trade Fournette for anything, and they couldn't get a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, a 7th-round pick. They could not get anything from Leonard Fournette, so they cut him. He is now a free agent. Any team in the NFL can sign him. From a fantasy aspect, gentlemen, it's a weird time. We're 2 weeks away from the regular season. So let's just start off talking about Fournette. If you drafted Leonard Fournette, what are you doing with Leonard Fournette right now?
Oh, I mean, I think you have to hang on to him. I don't know who exactly is going to want to try to trade for somebody who's not on a team right now, unless you're in a dynasty league and maybe get some draft capital off of it. But, I mean, he's more than likely going to get picked up. People might not want to have traded for him and taken on the contract he had already had with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I definitely think he'll get picked up, if not by week 1, by week 2 or 3, once those injuries start rolling in.
Yeah, I mean, you got to hold on to him. I mean, he'll definitely get picked up eventually. It's not like he's washed up. It's not like he's old. He's still got some fight left in him. And I just think the Jaguars, they want to have to, pay him after this year, end of his contract.
That's the point. They just wanted to clean house. I mean, and I guess apparently with the new scheme that they're going to be running, they're going to be doing a lot more passing. And I guess they were probably worried that Fournette was going to be unhappy, and they just wanted to get rid of their cancer in their locker room. But yeah, I mean, you probably spent a reasonably high draft pick on Fournette. So yeah, you absolutely have to hold on to him. Don't cut him. Chances are this is going to be a season like any other, and there could be more injuries. There could be other things that could go down in the season, and Leonard Fournette will find a home. There are still plenty of teams in the NFL who have muddy running back situations. So if you drafted Leonard Fournette, yes, it's very unfortunate that his value has taken a significant hit, obviously, with the fact that he's not on a team. But at this point, the best thing to do is just hold on to him, and hopefully a team picks him up and he gets some sort of volume wherever he goes. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be at best probably a flex play wherever he goes. But for Jacksonville, very interesting, because normally when teams do this, they have a plan in place. But Jacksonville now has probably the worst running back room in the NFL. Right now, the favorite to be the starter is Raquel Armstead. I have no idea if I said his name right. I never heard of him. Last year, 35 carries for 108 yards. He got the start week 17 with Fournette not playing that game last year. Had 19.5 fantasy points. The Jaguars added Chris Thompson, who was very good on Washington, but he has had a problem staying healthy. He's the pass-catching back in that offense. And then there's Devine Ozigbo. Never heard of him either. We have a couple no-namers in this offense. I actually added Ozigbo and Chris Thompson in a deep league because another guy added Armstead, because I guess I've been reading up that Ozigbo has actually had a really good camp with Jacksonville, for whatever that's worth. But guys, are these players that we might want to take a look at now, deep in drafts? If you have an extra roster spot to take a chance, what are our thoughts about any of these players?
I mean, they're gonna have to have a running back one there in Jacksonville. At some point in the season, someone's going to emerge as the number one. So, I mean, I would consider both of those people deep sleepers. Like you said, I had never heard of either one of them until you literally just said them now. So, I guess if you have a free roster spot and it's really really late in the draft, AKA last round, I guess if you pick one up and see if they can do anything. I mean, like I said, someone's gonna have to be the number one there.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would target Chris Thompson out of the three late round, especially in PPR formats, because he will be the pass catching back on a team that apparently will be throwing the ball a lot more this season. So Chris Thompson will see a good amount of playing time. And I think Gardner Minshew, if DJ Chark's not there and, if he has to check down, it's going to be Chris Thompson. So you can get some points out of those receptions. But, that's just one of the guys that you'll get maybe for a bye week fill-in if needed. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I picked up Thompson and Zebo just because who knows how that backfield will shake out. But don't go out of your way that if someone's already picked him up, don't trade anybody of major value because you just don't know how this backfield's going to shake out. Like you said, Bob, Chris Thompson could be interesting, but really whoever is going to be running between the tackles. Leonard Fournette has struggled to run behind that offensive line for years. I imagine Jacksonville just saying, hey, we're going to try to run the ball 15 times a game, but seems like it's going to be Minshew mania, and it's just going to be him passing the ball, 35, 40 times. But it'll be interesting. It's not really a situation that you're excited about because there's really no one in that backfield that you're like, oh, sweet. Which is why it's interesting that if Jacksonville was planning on cutting him, you would have thought that maybe they would have drafted a running back with how good the running backs were. But hey, we're not the GMs. We're just analyzing and breaking down what we're seeing. But I'm really excited because obviously we're talking about the AFC North in episode 6. Me and Fleck are both Browns fans. It's a fun division. The AFC North, we all believe, has a chance to be a really fun division this year. Just want to start off, guys, because there's a couple interesting positions that I think are going to be really good debates. I want to start with the fact we'll start with the Browns. Debating Odell versus Juju. I think it's an interesting topic because they're both going similar rounds. They're both going in around the third or fourth round. Whoever wants to start, I'm asking you guys, would you guys rather have Juju or would you rather have Odell? And for context, Juju is going above Odell right now, but barely. It's Juju's being picked as receiver 12. Odell's being picked at receiver 13. They're both being picked in the fourth round of ESPN 10-team leagues. Who would you rather have and why?
I think for me personally right now, if I'm drafting them as a wide receiver 1, if they're going at their current ADP, I like Juju Smith-Schuster better. He's not going to have as loaded of an offense around him. Odell's going to also have to compete with Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, Donovan's People-Jones if he ends up being decent, as well as having 2 really good running backs who can catch out of the backfield.
And Harrison Bryant too. Browns have a loaded receiving corps for sure.
Yeah, so especially with Big Ben coming back and Juju being a true number 1 receiver on that team, I like Juju's upside. In 2018, their last fully healthy season, Juju Smith-Schuster did score more fantasy points in PPR formats than Odell did. So,
no, listen, I really do like Juju. I think he's a great football player. I think my argument against him, and again, I have Odell Beckham in a league, so of course I'm going to advocate for OBJ. But I think the main reason why I'm taking Odell is because, yes, he does have the crowded room. He does have Jarvis, Austin Hooper, Hunt, Chubb. All those guys are going to be getting their touches as well. But I think, for me, what is concerning is, can Big Ben make it through another 16-game season? I don't think he will. There's reports coming out today that he's been dealing with arm issues for 13 years, which is crazy. And he has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for a long time until the last couple of seasons. But you saw what happened with Juju when there's no Big Ben. Juju was not even playable. And my thing is, yeah, right. And I understand that. My thing is, if Ben were to go down, same thing for the Browns. What if Baker goes down? The Browns have Case Keenum. So worst comes to worst, Case Keenum's throwing Odell the ball. Case Keenum is a capable backup quarterback. So I think in terms of limiting the risk, we saw what Odell did last year. And keep in mind, Odell he had a 70-catch season, over 1,000 yards, and he was playing through a nagging injury all season long. And he still finished as a top 20 fantasy option. And a lot of people gave him heat because he wasn't Odell. I think with a healthy Odell, Kevin Stefanski in that offense, they're going to run the ball even better. They're actually going to let Baker take deep shots. I think Baker's going to be a lot better. I'm taking Odell on top of the fact that thinking, hey, if we've already seen what happens when Juju loses Ben, if Odell were to lose Baker, I don't think his value is significantly worse than with Juju if he lost Ben again.
I think another thing with that, Tommy, is, I go with OBJ there. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a Browns fan or, I truly feel this way. But I go with Beckham here just because, with the Steelers, Juju is their number one, right? And the Browns have so many offensive weapons that defenses have to scheme for all those offensive weapons. So maybe one week Odell does get, a little shut down. They double team him a lot. That's going to open up the doors for other people. And then the next week, the next defense is going to have to scheme for those guys. And so some weeks I think, he's going to be locked down. Other weeks I think he's going to be booming. He's going to be great. So it'll be interesting to see how defenses do want to play the Browns this year. I mean, with all those different targets they have, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I'm definitely going to take Beckham in this situation.
Again, I like Juju this year. I think Juju's going to bounce back. So I'm not a Juju hater by any means, but
I don't know. I like a healthy Big Ben more so than I like a healthy Baker Mayfield when throwing.
A slim
well,
Big Ben.
hey,
too.
you know what? That is a perfect transition into
I'm just saying,
debate,
what
gentlemen, is Baker versus Big Ben versus, and we're going to throw Joe Burrow in the mix because we all know Lamar Jackson is the best fantasy football quarterback option in this division, without a doubt. We all agree to that, without a doubt. We are not idiots. But I think after him, you have Baker, Big Ben, and now Joe Burrow. Athens, Ohio's finest, Joe Burrow. So I'm curious, of those three quarterbacks, who would you roster to say could be, if you really want to wait on a quarterback, you want to start this guy, or if you're in a 2-quarterback league and you want this guy to be your second quarterback? Of the three, who are you taking and why? Right now, it's going Big Ben, and then I believe Burrow actually might be. Burrow is going. Looking at where he's going quarterback ranking wise. Burrow is going. It's actually right now. Big Ben is 16. Burrow is 17. And Baker is quarterback 21. So people are taking Joe Burrow over Baker Mayfield. Of the three, who would you guys take?
I think it's a little disrespectful towards Mayfield just because of his down year last year. He didn't perform like we had all hoped and loved for him to. But he's still young, and I really do think he had some more maturing to do. And going into this season, especially with the new coach, I think he's really going to prove everybody wrong. A lot of people think he's a bust, and there's a lot of negative energy around that. I'm not going to draft Baker Mayfield as a starter for my fantasy team, but if I could get him, later in the draft and put him on my bench to see, how the rest of the season goes, I think later on he can win you some football games.
I think out of the three, I wouldn't be confident in any of them as a QB1. But if you're the kind of person who waits until the last 5 rounds to draft either of the QBs you want to have rostered, I would go with Big Ben. And let me tell you why. Before his injury last year that ended his season, in 2017, he was the 10th best fantasy football quarterback. In 2018, he was the 3rd best fantasy football quarterback. And that's what I care about, is if you're going to be a good fantasy football quarterback. I don't care if you're going to win actual games unless you're on the team that I like.
That's
and
right.
Our quarterback
option. Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, then you don't matter.
Yeah. So I think Big Ben, just experience-wise, coming off, this is the healthiest he's looked in years as far as his physique is concerned. He's slim Ben. I think he's going to come out with a lot to prove. He said his arm is feeling the best it's felt in 13 years. And I think the Steelers, with Tomlin still as the head coach, they're just so consistently good all the time. I'm going to take Big Ben, who is the most surefire of those three options. There's still a big question mark around Joe Burrow. There's a big question mark around Baker Mayfield, his 3rd head coach in as many seasons. So we'll see. No, he's had 4 head coaches, hasn't he? Hugh, Greg Williams, Freddie Kitchens, and now Stefanski.
If you count Greg Williams,
Yeah.
Interim head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, to make it or break a year for Baker Mayfield, as a Browns fan, you watch him and it's year 3. I mean, people need to not forget though he did break the record for most touchdowns as a rookie. And again, Freddie Kitchens was a bad hire. I think Freddie really a colossal just mistake. I think a better coach who knows what he's doing. Again, Stefanski, he's never had any success as a head coach because he's never been one. So he could be worse, but we'll see. For the sake of this argument, though, I think, we know what Big Ben is going to do. We know what his best is. But I think Joe Burrow in this group is very fascinating to me because I think a lot of people are just – the media just says, the Bengals are a terrible place to go. Like, Joe's not going to – I think there is something to be said about the fact that, like, he's playing in his hometown. He's playing an hour and a half away from home. He's going to play better even though there's not fans. And I think from a fantasy perspective, that will help him. I love Tyler Boyd. I think Tyler Boyd's going to have a fantastic season. A healthy A.J. Green's going to be awesome. And then they get a healthy John Ross, Joe Mixon, Gio Bernard. It is not out of this realm that Joe Burrow were to sneak into the top 10 in fantasy. So to me, if I'm picking between Joe Burrow and Big Ben, I'm taking a shot on Joe and seeing what he can do because who knows?
If it's a dynasty league, yeah. But
in a dynasty league, sure. But even in, I would take that. I would take the gamble. I would do it.
I don't know. It's okay.
I would roll the dice on Joe. See what he does. Worst comes to worst, he's not any good. You can always pick up a starting quarterback, trade for one.
When Mr. Trubisky pops off, pick him up off the bench.
I think you said Nick Foles' name wrong.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Burrow adjusts to the NFL. But speaking of the Bengals, I think another interesting thing that I've been kind of looking at is who's the best running back option to pick in this division. Nick Chubb right now on ESPN leagues is going, I believe, in the top 10. Could be wrong. He's going as the 9th player overall, average pick of 13.8, and then Joe Mixon is going as the 25th player. He's going at pick 24.5. Guys, I'm curious if you had to pick between Chubb and Mixon for this year, and maybe even in a dynasty league, they're both about the same age. I think Chubb's 24, Mixon might be 25. Who would you take between those two backs?
I think that, from a fantasy perspective, Mixon might be the move there just because, Chubb does have Hunt behind him and they're going to be, sharing time a little more, and Mixon is the clear-cut number 1 there. So I think he's going to get a lot of carries. He's going to get a lot of receptions, especially with a young quarterback back there. He's under pressure and he feels like he just needs to get rid of it. A little swing out from the back in the backfield, just dump it off to him. So from a fantasy perspective, I think Mixon's going to be the move. But I am excited to see, how Chubb and Hunt run that backfield in Cleveland.
I know Bob's a big Hunt guy. Loves Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt is just so good. He's so good, man. Especially in fantasy football. He's PPR leagues. He loves to catch out of the backfield. I lean Nick Chubb just because of his overall capability. Nick Chubb can take a ball to the house from anywhere on the field at any given moment. And I think with the new regime that is in Cleveland, they're going to run a lot more 12 personnel. I wouldn't be surprised if they run a lot of pistol with both Kareem Hunt and Chubb both in that backfield. And I could definitely see them running the ball 30-plus times a game and just taking a bunch of shots with Odell and Jarvis. And so I definitely
thought they were going to do last year, and then Freddie Kitchens was just
it's Freddie Kitchens.
I could have been a better coordinator than Freddie Kitchens. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where Nick Chubb he's also one of the types of running backs that gets better throughout the game. And Joe Mixon gets better throughout the season. If you look at last year especially, he kind of started off slow and then started to get a little bit more going.
I had Mixon in our league last year, and it was so frustrating. I picked him over Dalvin Cook. Still one of the worst draft day decisions, and Fleck ended up with Dalvin. It was just horrible.
Rookie quarterback in Cincinnati. It doesn't matter if it is Joe Burrow or not. Defenses are going to make a focal point of stopping that run game and trying to make Joe Burrow win the games for that team.
That's a good way to look at it, Bob. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and so I think, with Baker being in his third year, he at least has that experience. The game's going to start being a little bit more slow for him. He's going to get a lot more understanding of reading coverages and schemes. And I can see Nick Chubb having a pretty big year on the ground.
It's funny. As much as I love Nick Chubb, for where Joe Mixon's going, I'd rather have Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon is the much better value. And I think for me, as a Chubb guy, I love Chubb. He's just a dude that you can root for. He's just a quiet guy. He does his job. But
he goes to work.
From a fantasy perspective, once Kareem Hunt was entered in the picture, Nick Chubb was, I believe. Oh, sorry. I literally thought I got exited out. That was weird. I was like, oh my gosh, did we just get kicked out of our podcast? Anyways. So Nick Chubb was an RB2 after Kareem Hunt entered in the picture. He was RB6 before Hunt after he got back from his suspension. Then once Hunt came back, Chubb was RB15. He only really had one or two dominant games where he ran for over 100 yards and scored a touchdown. His receptions decreased substantially. For Joe Mixon, I mean, he's going in the third round, which is crazy to me. I don't understand how Joe.
Third round?
In ESPN leagues, his ADP right now is 24.5, which puts him in the third round. That's crazy.
He was 17, or not even. I think he was like 14 yesterday in my draft that I did.
Right, that's what I'm saying, because the ESPN rankings have him inside the top 15, but for some reason on this, they still on their ADP still has Joe Mixon going in the third round. Now, Mixon is going. I mean, from the drafts that we've been doing, he's been going in the second round.
Yeah, he'll be top of the second round.
Absolutely. I personally would actually go with Mixon, as much as I hate to say it, just because I think Gio Bernard is still a factor. But Mixon was excellent down the stretch, and Andy Dalton was Andy Dalton. I think that yes, defenses will probably still key on Joe Mixon, but I just think that Burrow's going to be able to move the ball, and I think Mixon's going to be better. I think the concern for me is it's just going to be, I don't know how Stefanski's going to use both Chubb and Hunt. And my concern is if Nick Chubb does not find the end zone, he's going to have a hard time getting to double-digit points unless he's running for over 100 yards, because I don't see him getting a lot of receiving work. Now, I could be wrong. But I personally would actually take Joe Mixon over Nick Chubb, as much as I hate to admit that. So it'll be an interesting thing to see how it plays out. But I think we all agree that Kareem Hunt is by far the most valuable handcuff in fantasy football. I mean, he's a flex play in his own right, and he might even flirt with low-end RB2 numbers depending on how he's using that offense.
Yeah, if you could get two running backs on the same team, those are the two to get.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I would say the second best option to getting two on the same team would be anybody on the 49ers.
That's true.
Just because they run the crap
out.
Oh, yeah. But maybe also, depending on how J.K. Dobbins does, Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins that'd be a good combo as well on a team that loves to run the crap out of the football.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the Ravens, haven't really chatted about them much yet. Lamar just took over fantasy football in the NFL last year. I mean, he was a fantasy darling for a lot of people. He was either not drafted or a lot of people drafted him towards the end of drafts, and they got steal.
Traded for him after week 1. Oh,
just amazing what he did last year. It was a special season. Any concerns with Lamar? He's actually going – he's not number one. Mahomes is going ahead of Lamar. I know we debated this a long time ago, like 5-6 weeks ago, with Mahomes and Lamar, but Lamar's going 6 spots behind Patrick Mahomes right now. Any concerns about him having a bad year? He is the cover of Madden. Any Madden curse concerns?
Patrick Mahomes put those concerns away. Madden curses him. I love Lamar Jackson. I think if you're sitting there middle of the second round and he's still hanging around, you can snag him depending on who your running back is. And I say that strictly because of the points he will get you on the ground. Lamar Jackson, if you only used his rushing yards last year, not even his passing statistics, he was a top 10 running back in the NFL.
It's just ridiculous.
And so I think just the amount of touchdowns that he had 35 passing touchdowns last year, and I think he had 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns. I think he had 5 picks, and he's only going to get better. Mark Andrews is coming back. They're going to have more chemistry. Marquise Brown's a little heavier coming to camp this year, so he's going to be more than just a deep threat.
Hollywood looks big.
Yeah, I love Lamar Jackson. If you can get Lamar Jackson, you get Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have Patrick Mahomes in a dynasty league, and then I actually just drafted Lamar in the middle of the second round in the other league that I was in. I got Zeke at pick 5, and then depending on what running backs were on the board, I was going to go running back in the second round, but then all the best running backs were picked. I could have gone receiver, but I felt like knowing that at 25 I was going to get somebody that was still solid, I was like, you know what, give me Lamar. Like,
Yeah.
give me the surest thing in fantasy. Pairing Lamar with Zeke in that league, I ended up getting George Kittle, and I still got some pretty decent receivers. I was thrilled with that roster. So no, I'm absolutely all in on Lamar again. Even if his touchdowns go down, I think there's room for growth in passing. Like, he really did not. I mean, I think he maybe threw for 300 yards once or twice last year.
Yeah, he only had 3,200.
And that's because he didn't have to. I mean, he was so good on the ground. But no, give me Lamar, give me Patrick Mahomes. Love them both. But pass catchers for the Ravens, they don't have the flashy big receiver, but they do have Mark Andrews, and they do have Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews is ranked as I believe he's the 4th tight end. I think he's actually going as tight end.
I think it's tight end 5.
Where he's going? Could be wrong. He's right now on ESPN leagues. He's going tight end 3. Him and Zach Ertz are actually tied at 41.1. Going in the 5th, going at the top of the 5th, end of the 4th. Do we like that price for Mark Andrews? He had a great season last year, a great breakout season. No Hayden Hurst. Do we like that value for him?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
I think Andrews is a great option here for the Ravens. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, he's going to be Lamar's top receiving target, I think. I mean, he ranked no lower than 5th in yards per reception during the last 2 seasons. And, he had 11 end zone targets, which tied him for the most among tight ends, and 8th in the entire league, actually. So, like we said, there's room for Lamar to progress as far as throwing the ball goes. And a big tight end option is always great to have. So look at Lamar slinging it to him a little more this year.
I mean, I love Mark Andrews. I love Mark Andrews, and I love Hollywood Brown. I think Hollywood Brown, I know Matthew Berry said this, but I think as of now, Hollywood Brown is one of the biggest discounts in ESPN fantasy drafts. And I am really mad that I have not been able to get him, because people are kind of picking up on it. Like, hey, he's probably going to have a pretty good year. He's healthy. He's Lamar's #1 receiving target outside of, you've got Mark Andrews, and then there's Hollywood Brown, who is going, this is criminal, receiver 30, pick 81. Just criminal. The last draft I had, I think he went in the 6th round, which is where I think he should be going, in that 5th or 6th round, because the potential is there for him to be the next closest thing to Tyreek Hill. And I think Mark Andrews, I have no problem with him going where he's going. I think he should be the 3rd tight end off the board. I like him more than Zach Ertz. He's younger. He's got the better passing game. He's the centerpiece of that offense with Hollywood Brown and with Lamar. I love both of Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown. I think if you can get both of those guys on your team, it's not the greatest thing in the world to have 2 pass catchers on the same team, but I love Mark Andrews. I love Hollywood Brown. They are both great. I have no problem with people taking Mark Andrews in the 4th round. I think he's a good value there because of the receiver depth, especially if you get a couple good running backs early, you grab a receiver. If you take Mark Andrews in the 4th round, I have no problem with it.
I don't value tight end play as high as you do, though. I mean, it just depends on who's in the 4th round. There's still going to be a lot of really good wide receiver 1 options in this year's draft. There's so many wide receiver options that I think could potentially score more weekly than Mark Andrews. And I think it's because teams are going to pick up on what he did last year. You know what I mean? There's only been 1 tight end who's had 1,000 yards receiving in 4+ seasons, and it's Travis Kelce. And so I'm hesitant to put Mark Andrews in that same classification as Kelce. If he could do it again this year, then
I'm not. No, by no means am I doing that.
But the 4th round for a tight end that's not Kittle or Kelce's kind of high for me, depending on what else is there. But if you already have 2 stud running backs and a good wide receiver 1, 4th round, you can pull the trigger on him if you value tight end play that heavily.
I just personally, I'm not a huge fan of some of these tight ends later, and I think that because receiver is so deep, I don't have a problem with if you go running back to start your draft, and then say you grab a.
Their tight end's a little deeper than you think. There are some options that are gonna be very good this year that aren't.
I personally think that Mark Andrews can be even better than last year. I mean, yeah, he caught 10 touchdowns. That's probably that number will go down, but he did only have 64 receptions, 850 yards. No Hayden Hurst. He's going to be on the field more. I just think Baltimore might have to throw it a little bit more. They could still be run. I think they're going to be a run-heavy team, of course, but I think there's room for growth. And personally, if you can still you take your Allen Robinson, Juju, Odell, one of those guys in the 3rd round, or if you're picking high, like if you get like a Mike Evans, Godwin, like late 2nd, early 3rd or something like that. Because, I mean, you look at some of the receivers, you have Keenan Allen going at 56, Robert Woods at 50, Kupp at 48, A.J. Brown at 47, Lockett at 46. Those are guys going in the 5th round. So you can afford to, quote-unquote, reach for Mark Andrews in the 4th and still get one of those guys as your receiver, too, to complement what you already have with your 2 running backs. Maybe you grab, like, an Allen Robinson. I love that lineup. I'm cool with that because receiver is just so deep.
I feel like losing Hayden Hurst could actually hurt Mark Andrews because if he's on the field, you know that it's probably going to be a pass compared to last year when you don't necessarily know that. And so I just don't value tight end play that high. I mean, he only had 205 total fantasy points last year, and it's because the amount
of receiver 2 numbers though.
So do you think he's going to manage 10 touchdowns again this year? It's very hard to keep double-digit touchdowns. And so I think there will be some regression in his overall score. And so I think if there's a decent amount of tight ends you can still get later in the drafts that'll be fine for you week in and week out, like the T.J. Hawkinson, Mike Gesicki. I even think Eric Ebron is going to have another really good year. 2 years ago, he was the number 4 tight end in fantasy football with Andrew Luck. And he gets Big Ben healthy again this year, he might be the 2nd best target they have on that offense besides Schuster. And so to me, I'd rather have more wide receivers that I know are going to get 9 to 12 targets a game, 7 to 10 catches a game than somebody who's only going to get 64 total receptions on a season in a PPR league.
But for me, I'm banking on that number going up. And I think that because I know that the Ravens have talked about trying to pass the ball a little more. I just think that when you've got receivers like Brandon Cooks, even Deebo Samuel, who's injured. I mean, Edelman's at 34, Will Fuller at 33, Tyler Boyd at 32, Michael Gallup at 31. I mean, these are guys that you can get in the later middle rounds, and these guys wouldn't even be your receiver 2. You're probably getting these guys as like your receiver 3. Like you can end up with hypothetically, if you could go Allen Robinson in the 3rd, Mark Andrews in the 4th, come back and get a guy like DK, Woods, Kupp, Lockett in the 5th, and then still you could get 2 of Gallup, Fuller, Cooks. I don't know. I would personally rather have Mark Andrews in that mix, who is going to give you probably receiver 2 numbers, and you know what you're going to get out of your tight end position, than get a guy like Evan Ingram, who always misses time with injury, or Hunter Henry, who misses time with injury, or Gronk, because we don't know what Gronk's going to be. I like Noah Fant, but you don't even know what he's going to give you. I'm a huge Hayden Hurst guy, but you don't know what his target share is going to be with Atlanta. So to me, I don't mind reaching a little bit for a tight end if that ensures me getting a guy who I know is going to get consistent looks in a very good offense.
Yeah, Tommy, I agree with you on that one. I mean, you guys know how I value tight end play. I'm a normally tight end guy, and I'm normally a tight end guy in the 3rd round all the time. I like being able to depend on someone who's going to consistently get me, double digits, if not close to it, every week. And like you're saying, like you can easily get a wide receiver 1 or 2 in those later rounds. And I don't know. I would definitely pull the trigger on Andrews in the 3rd. If Kelsey and Kittle,
I can't go Andrews in the 3rd. I would be comfortable if I'm 4th round, depending on what receivers are on the board. If there are a lot of good receivers on the board that I love, then I'm taking a couple receivers there. But I would not take Andrews sooner than.
Okay, no, sorry, in the 4th.
I'm not taking him sooner than the 4th round. I would be comfortable knowing that, okay, I can get a couple more receivers in the 5th or 6th round because
I don't know. Like, I was able in my draft yesterday to hold off on tight end until the 6th or 7th round, and I got Darren Waller. And with the pick, I could have got Mark Andrews. I got Chris Carson. And so,
if Chris Carson is on the board, if those running backs are still on the board, yeah, I'm taking Chris Carson, getting another running back. Absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I also don't know how many drafts you're going to have where Mark Andrews goes in the 4th round. Like, I don't see that happening a lot. The 2 tight ends that will come off the board immediately, with no later than the 3rd round, are Kittle and Kelsey.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe Zach Ertz in the 4th, just on name value alone. But I don't know. Mark Andrews in the 4th just seems early to me. He's not in that top tier tight end group yet. Especially last year, if you look at him, he only had consecutive weeks with over 10 points 3 times. So he was really streaky. He'd go from having 24 points to 4, to 13 to 9. And so it's really, for him, it's touchdown dependent, even in PPR leagues, because he doesn't get those receptions, because the Ravens don't throw the ball that much. And I think they're going to continue to pound it when they have Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and now they added J.K. Dobbins to that, who is an insane athlete. So I don't know. I'm not high.
No, I mean, it's fair. I'm banking on the volume going up for sure, but I'm saying, like, I wouldn't scratch my head if I watched something, because I'd be like, okay, well, this person is trying to ensure a good tight end, but no, we'll see what happens. I'm curious, guys, because I know we've debated a lot of the key positional battles. Another couple guys I want to bring up are James Conner versus Mark Ingram, and then we can even chat about J.K. Dobbins, because I think these are also interesting pieces in fantasy. James Conner obviously had the explosive year a couple seasons ago when Le'Veon Bell decided to hold out. I mean, if you drafted James Conner, if you picked him up, I mean, James Conner was a league winner for people, because, I mean, you got an RB1 for free if you did that. And a lot of Le'Veon Bell owners who didn't get James Conner hated their life for most of what was that, the 2018 season? Yeah. So James Conner versus Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was awesome on the Ravens. He was a top 10 fantasy back. I mean, he was just the definition of efficient last year. You know, he barely crossed 200 carries, but he ran for over 1,000 yards, got double-digit touchdowns. I mean, him and Lamar Jackson were outstanding last year. But obviously, J.K. Dobbins, one of the best Ohio State running backs to come through in a long time in recent memory. I was very disappointed as a Browns fan to see him go to Baltimore, but now he is in the fold. Are we taking? Do we like the upside of Dobbins going later in drafts, or do we like James Conner bouncing back if he's healthy, or do we like Mark Ingram as the veteran returning? Who's got the most upside of the 3 for this fantasy season?
I think at where they're being picked, it's Mark Ingram. It really he was an RB2 the entire year last year with RB1 upside each week. He had 15 total touchdowns last year. And I could see him being, for sure, at least the red zone running back late in the season. I mean, he's so hard to tackle. He's 5'9", 215. His low center of gravity, and he loves getting hit. So I think on a team coached by Harbaugh, they're going to be ground and pound. They're going to try to get those play action deep bombs going with Brown. And I think that they're going to just pound the rock again because it works so well. And so I like Mark Ingram. If you get Mark Ingram where he's going at, I think it's like 4th, 5th round, I definitely recommend later in the draft getting JK as that handcuff.
Ingram is going at pick 73 right now on ESPN.
Yeah. So I definitely
– That'd be a steal.
So
amazing value. I mean, it's like you said, Bob. He's getting the rock. He's RB 26. James Conner is RB 21. He's actually going at pick 52, so that's about 20 picks difference, 2 rounds different. I do like Mark Ingram, but I think James Conner is getting slept on. I know that the Steelers have added a lot of players to that running back room, but I think that a healthy Big Ben again for James Conner, I think he will outperform RB21. I don't think that is going to be an RB by committee. So I think he's also a really good value. I know that he's not the most efficient runner in the world by any means, but I think that he's going to get enough touches to be a really good player. I think that I would be surprised if he finished ahead of Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, obviously Leonard Fournette's going to drop here in a bit. It wouldn't surprise me if he were to finish above Todd Gurley, David Johnson. I could definitely see him bouncing back and getting back into at least the top 15. But I do like Mark Ingram's value. I think J.K. Dobbins is interesting, but he's going as RB34. And to me, it's like unless Mark Ingram goes down, J.K. Dobbins is maybe a flex at best. I just don't see him getting a ton of touches. I still think it's going to be Mark Ingram for a while. Now, if Mark Ingram goes down, J.K. Dobbins is going to be an instant RB2, and you could argue he'd be an RB1. But I like the value of Connor and Ingram right now.
I'm not very high on Connor just because of the injuries. I mean, he was the 9th best running back last year through week 8, and then injuries for the rest of the season limited him to 54 snaps. And I mean, if he stays healthy and cannot get injured, it'd be interesting to see what he does. But I like Ingram there. And if you're in a dynasty league and you can get JK maybe a little later than where he's going right now, it'd be interesting to see where he what value he has later on in like next seasons.
Oh, absolutely love J.K. Dobbins for Dynasty, without a doubt.
If you're going to try to get James Conner this year, and especially in redraft leagues late, he should be there in the last 3 or 4 rounds. Look at Benny Snell Jr. for a handcuff. He was an absolute monster for the University of Kentucky. He is a top 3 rusher in SEC history.
Can I get a Snell, yeah?
Yeah, he has that tattooed on his chest, which, it's whatever. But he can run the football. And so if James Conner does go down, I definitely could see Benny Snell Jr. ending up getting that start.
I think Anthony McFarland is an intriguing dynasty pick there. I know the Steelers just drafted him out of into the Big Ten school, Maryland. He went to Maryland.
Yeah,
I think it could be interesting.
And he was a beast for Maryland, even though Maryland football isn't ever really that good.
Right. I think
he was a diamond in the rough for sure.
But I think he could be a guy that if you're in a deep dynasty league, he might be worth taking a shot on. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if Connor can bounce back and what that Baltimore running game looks like with J.K. Dobbins now out of the fold. But last debate, unless you guys want me to bring up something else, but I think this is also another fascinating discussion is AJ Green versus Tyler Boyd with the Bengals. Both receivers, I mean, obviously AJ Green has been one of the best receivers in the league for as long as we can remember. I mean, it's hard to believe that he's already 32 years old. And then, he's not in the twilight of his career yet, but he's definitely been battling injuries. Right now, AJ Green is going as receiver 29. Tyler Boyd, who has been awesome in his first couple years in the league, he's going as receiver 32. So they're both being drafted as kind of like a receiver 3. Do we think Burrow connects with AJ Green better, or are we taking Tyler Boyd, banking on the continued success from the youth slot man?
I like Tyler Boyd. I like the guy who has been healthy more consistently in the past few seasons. Also, if you look at Tyler Boyd and what he has done in the past 2 years, he actually has put up better overall numbers than Odell Beckham Jr. And so I definitely like Tyler Boyd now with Joe Burrow there, who is just going to bring consistency back to that QB1 position. Last year, he had 90 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That was about 24 more catches than what he had in 2018. And I think he's just going to build off of that as well. He had 140.
Quick question for you, Bob. Would you rather have Tyler Boyd or Hollywood Brown?
Right now?
Right now.
Tyler Boyd.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
I mean, Hollywood Brown's coming off a rookie year where he had 520 yards and I think 6 touchdowns. And so I'd rather have somebody who's going to get me more total catches, more total yards, and 1 less touchdown, because in the grand scheme of things, it's going to relate to more fantasy points for me. And I think Tyler Boyd's going to end up being the wide receiver 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals.
No, you know what? I can't argue it against that, I can totally say I think Tyler Boyd is the better value. I get AJ Green as a stud, but again, the injury concerns are there. And let's keep in mind, Tyler Boyd lives in the slot. Joe Burrow loves the slot. Justin Jefferson just caught 114 balls out of the slot. Now, granted, I know that college is a different animal than the NFL, but Joe Burrow loves the slot, and I think Tyler Boyd for receiver 32. I mean, if you get him as your receiver 4, like, are you kidding me? Like, I think that is a major value for sure. Now, I think AJ Green could be good, but I think I feel more comfortable taking Tyler Boyd over AJ Green. Now, if I end up with AJ Green as my receiver 3, receiver 4, then hey, that offers some upside compared to some of the other guys that are going there. But yeah, absolutely. Give me some Tyler Boyd, man. 90 receptions last year in that mess of an offense. Joe Burrow's going to, like you said, bring stability. I think Tyler Boyd is an excellent play. Him versus Hollywood in a dynasty league, I think I'd still lean Hollywood just because he's younger. I think there's more upside. But again, I think they're both great options for this year. And I think this year I'd probably go Tyler Boyd over Hollywood as well.
Yeah, Boyd is definitely the play over Green. Back to that point. Again, the injuries with Green are just, he's been hurt at least 6 games during the regular season in 3 of the 4 past seasons. Hard to talk right now. And you want someone who's consistent and is going to put up consistent value for your team. And obviously you don't want any of your players injured. So he's too risky to take. Boyd all the way.
Boyd all the way. Well, we've dissected the AFC North pretty well. I mean, it's going to be a fun division. I think obviously some games can be more just defensive standoffs, I should say, but I think it's going to be a fun fantasy division. I think Joe Burrow entering the mix. I think it's going to be 4 solid offenses, at least it should be. But
on paper,
we'll see. But it's hard to believe, guys. We're a couple weeks away from the season. The first game is a week from Thursday. So that's going to be awesome. Can't wait to preview that. But we're almost through every division. We've got 2 divisions left. We have the NFC East, and then we have the AFC East, or I should maybe say the AFC least.
We didn't do the NFC North.
Oh, we haven't done the NFC North either. Wow, okay. I cannot forget about the NFC North.
No, we can't.
The Chicago Bears. So, you know what? Next week, it'll be for Bob. We'll talk about the NFC North.
And the Bears still won't name a starter.
Nagy's dragging it out.
They're not naming one until literally the offense comes out in the first series against Detroit.
They're going to do a coin flip. That, or they're going to just start both of them. Put them both back there. You don't know who the snap's going to.
Well, you know what? Next week, we will break that all down. And, of course, I would be remiss without saying that we are once again sponsored by 2 Cups, our proud sponsor. Griffin has said that business has been, quote-unquote, booming. So they've been doing very well on their Instagram and Twitter. Follow them at 2 Cup. And then, of course, follow us on the Average Fantasy Cast on Twitter and YouTube. But, yeah, it'll be fun. Hopefully we get ready to preview week 1 matchups and give our mini rankings, and should be fun. But hopefully Joe will be back with us next week as we debate the NFC North. So for Thomas Garbrick with the rest of our great Average Fantasy Cast panel, signing off. We'll see you later. Do this for Joe. Alrighty.
Cool.
When did we start? Like 7:10 maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't paying attention.
I think it was 7:10 maybe.